Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader, and we're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. This week's game, as it is another solo episode, much like last week, is 1999's Final Fantasy VIII, the legendary RPG franchise's second entry for the PlayStation, featuring incredibly impressive FMV cutscenes and the first vocal theme in series history. Yep, just like last week, we're doing another solo episode. This week you're stuck with me. Been a hell of a couple weeks, I'm gonna be real with you. So this was just a little easier. Hopefully next week we'll be able to get back to being, a 2-person show once again. Looking forward to that. Meanwhile, how am I doing and what have I been playing? I'm very tired. I'm so tired, man. I'm so tired. But I have been playing a couple of games. I played Decarnation, which has been mentioned on the show before because it was the indie game that just came out recently that featured work by Akira Yamaoka. And I didn't like it. You can find my review of this and also the other game that I finished over the time since we last recorded, being a game called Ghostpia, which is a visual novel that I actually really enjoyed. It is set up like an old anime where it has an OP and it has interstitial eye catches and ED, and it was just very fun. It was a very fun visual novel to read. And I definitely recommend it. I might bring that to the show at some point in the future. I don't know. Who knows? We're just going to have to find out. And I'm also about halfway through Harmony Fall of Reverie, which is the new Don't Nod game that came out last week, a couple weeks ago, recently, with music by Lena Raine. And it's pretty good so far. I still have to finish it, and I'll have a review out, hopefully, maybe by the time this episode comes out. I don't know. We'll have to find out. It'll be shortly after this, if not. So keep an eye out for that. It's been a lot of... I'm kind of in the phase now where I'm reading manga instead of playing games, though I'm not doing anything crazy this year, like reading all of One Piece in less than a month. So don't worry about that. Meanwhile, we have some composer follow-up news because, obviously, stuff has happened. A lot of stuff. It was not E3 a couple weeks ago, and Peter, if I remember correctly, recorded right before the Capcom showcase. And the most relevant thing for us in terms of the Capcom showcase is that they announced that finally the Apollo Justice trilogy from Ace Attorney is finally coming to modern platforms, which is awesome. So that is Apollo Justice, Ace Attorney, Dual Destinies, and Spirit of Justice, which we have talked about Spirit of Justice on the show. We haven't talked about the other two. Relatively worth your time. Apollo Justice, I remember being fine. Dual Destinies, I don't like, but you can make that judgment for yourself. And I remember Spirit of Justice being pretty good, honestly. Granted, there are a lot of people that scream about how those last 2 games are just the worst. And, I don't know, figure it out. Play them for yourself and figure it out. I don't know. We'll find out. But in games that are a little less known, there's a game called Fields of Mystria, which is another farming sim, to be fair. But it's one that I've had my eye on for a really long time because it has really gorgeous pixel art. And honestly, the character designs are fantastic, and the reason I bring it up here is because they released their first trailer during the Wholesome Games presentation. And the music in that trailer was apparently done by Toby Fox. Now, I don't know if he's involved with the rest of the game. That's kind of unclear. They specifically mentioned that he did music on the trailer. I'm hoping this means he's involved in the whole game in general, but we're gonna have to find out. I believe that game is set to release sometime next year in 2024, and I'm looking forward to it. Let's see where it goes. Alright, I'm gonna preface this real quick by saying I'm sorry in advance. We're going to talk about Final Fantasy VIII, and I'm going to get out in front of this. I don't like Final Fantasy VIII as a video game. I think it's bad for a large variety of reasons. And so if I seem like I'm being a bit mean to it, I'm sorry. I can't help it. But I do think that it'll be fun to talk about. So let's jump on in to Final Fantasy VIII, which was originally released on February 11th, 1999 in Japan. It would release in North America in September of that year, and then Europe and Australia in October. There was a Windows release in North America in January of 2000. It would come out in Europe following in February, and then Japan in March. Most recently, it was remastered and re-released on Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and PC on September 3rd, 2019. There was also apparently an Android release on March 24th, 2021, which I was not aware of. If you are going to play this game nowadays, that remaster is your best bet. It's what you should go in for. It was developed by Square, and the PlayStation version was published by Square everywhere but Australia. Specifically, in America, though, it was Square Electronic Arts, because don't forget, they had a partnership back then. But it was published by Sony Computer Entertainment Australia in Australia. The PC version was published by Square in North America and Japan, but in Europe it was published by Eidos Interactive. And then all following versions past that were obviously published by Square Enix. It is the 8th mainline Final Fantasy game, which I know might come as a surprise considering its title. It's also the second game in the series to launch on the PlayStation. Gameplay-wise, it plays like your average RPG. Mostly. The world map works exactly the same as previous games in the series, so does battle. Mostly. So you're probably asking, alright, what's different then? Drawing and junctioning. Now, bear with me. I'm going to try my best to explain this in a way that makes sense. It doesn't feel as complicated to explain as it might be. I don't know. Let's see how well I do. So, battles use the ATB system, just like the previous games in the series, which, if you don't know what that means, it means that every character has a bar that fills up, and once that bar fills up, they are able to do an action, and time is constantly moving. Instead of, like, being completely turn-based, it's based on the character's speed and how fast that bar fills up. But, by default, characters in FF8 only have access to a regular attack. And you can change this, though, by attaching, or as the game calls it, junctioning, a summon to that character, giving them access to more abilities based on which summon you're junctioning. Except they're not called summons in this game, they're called GFs. Not girlfriends, guardian forces. Why would you think it was the first one? But that is not all! Magic in FF8 works completely differently than any other game I've ever seen. So instead of having an MP bar, as is tradition in RPGs, deciding what magic you can use and how much, in Final Fantasy VIII, you have to draw magic out of enemies, or out of draw points you can find around the world. 1 unit equals 1 cast of that spell. So, for example, let's say that you're fighting an enemy and you draw 5 Fyras out of that enemy. Whatever character did that now has the ability to use Fyra 5 times. But that's not all either, because you can then take this magic and you can junction it to a character's specific stats, such as attack or defense. And this offers certain bonuses, with some magic types being better for some stats than others. And this is meant to give the game a high amount of customizability, which is even higher than the amount of customizability that the Materia system of 7 offered. And in case you're wondering, that does mean that if you use magic that is junctioned to a stat, that stat goes down. Isn't that cool? But this whole system wholesale replaces the usual RPG activity of going out to buy armor. You also don't need to go buy weapons in this game, because every character has a unique weapon that can instead be upgraded as the game goes on. Limit breaks have also come back from 7, but instead of being based on a bar filling up like in that game, they only have a chance to activate if the character is at low health. There's also Triple Triad, but I didn't play any Triple Triad, but people really like Triple Triad. It's a card game. You can collect cards throughout the game, and you can play Triple Triad with characters, and it's extremely popular. It's like one of the most popular things about the game. I didn't really interact with it much. I'm not much of a card game guy. That's just me. So what is the story of Final Fantasy VIII? Well, let me try and give a summary of the beginning. Harder than it sounds. In the military academy of Balam Garden, students train in the hopes to be promoted to Seed, an association of mercenaries for hire. Squall Leonhardt is one such student who, with the help of his instructor, Kistis Trepp, has completed the prerequisites to take the final exam, deciding whether or not he is able to graduate into Seed. This exam takes the form of a real battle when Seed is hired to help a neighboring nation defend itself from an invasion by the Republic of Galbadia. Squall is partnered up with his rival, Cypher Almasi, as well as an excitable martial artist named Zell Dinkt. When Cypher disobeys orders and abandons his team, his place is taken by a young girl from a different garden named Selphie Tilmit. Everybody in Squall's group passes the exam with the exception of Cypher, who is rejected for disobeying orders. At the graduation party, Squall meets a young woman named Rinoa Heartily, who instantly takes a shine to Squall. For some reason. The following day, Squall is then given an assignment alongside Zell and Selphie to accompany Rinoa back to her hometown of Timber, which is currently under occupation by Galbadian forces. Their job is to help a resistance group assassinate sorceress Adia, the woman responsible for Galbadia's sudden aggression. All the while, the group keeps getting drawn into vivid dreams, where Squall takes the perspective of Laguna Loire, a soldier who fights using a machine gun. So the main questions are, what is Sorceress Adia's plans and her reason behind invading Galbadia's neighbors? Why does Cypher seem to have joined her cause? Why does the group keep having flashbacks to Laguna's exploits? And can the crew successfully assassinate the sorceress, or is this merely going to lead to something much bigger? And this would be where I ask what our experiences are with Final Fantasy VIII, and mine are, I hate this game. I don't hate this game. I just don't think it's very good. I hate the draw and junction system. I think it's super tedious, especially drawing 100%. Squall is the second worst protagonist Final Fantasy has ever had. Tidus still takes that spot 100%, like, without a doubt in my mind. But, like, at least Tidus has a personality, I guess. I can give him that. Squall is a piece of cardboard that was brought to life by the Blue Fairy hoping to become a real boy. And he sucks. He sucks. He sucks so much. They wanted to make Cloud again, but Cloud is like, the joke is that Cloud's super serious thing is that he's a dork and nobody takes him seriously. But it feels like Squall is being taken seriously the entire time, and it's weird. Also, the romance between Squall and Rinoa just happens. There's no chemistry between either of them. There is more chemistry between Tidus and Yuna than there is between Squall and Rinoa, and that's dire. But the music's pretty good, though. I know a lot of people really, really like Final Fantasy VIII, and I don't want to be too mean to it, but I don't know. Without cheats, I don't think I would have finished it. I would have dropped it pretty quick. It's just a lot. It's a lot. That game is a lot. 9 and 7 are both better. In terms of the PS1 Final Fantasies, I'm sorry. That's just how it is. But it also has a very interesting development story, so let's get into that. It began development in 1997, at the same time that Final Fantasy VII was in the process of being localized for its Western release. The idea behind the game's visual design was to mix fantasy and realism, which is why characters are largely designed to look like regular people. And they kind of honestly did a good job with this. This is probably the last Final Fantasy game where the cast is wearing clothes I could probably actually find in the real world at a store, probably up until FF15, when they're just dressed like people. There's no outlandish zippers, no giant shoulder pads, no elaborate coats, no anything like that. Except for the sorceress. She's a whole other can of worms in terms of character designs. She's the second stupidest looking antagonist Final Fantasy has ever had. She looks terrible. She looks really stupid. It's dumb. But this also meant that if they wanted to do this, they were going to have to work to make sure that characters had realistic proportions as opposed to the Popeye models that were used in Final Fantasy VII. And another major focus of development was the FMV cinematics, which were made by a team of around 35 people, and they implemented motion capture for the first time in the studio in order to make the characters' movements more realistic. There's a total of around an hour of cinematics in Final Fantasy VIII, which is apparently around 20 more minutes than 7. They also gave the game a bit of a brighter visual style and color palette in direct contrast to the darker, more desolate world that they had featured in 7. They figured, yeah, we covered the dark thing. Let's have it be a little bit brighter than it was before. So, the first character to be designed for the game was Squall. His overall appearance was apparently inspired by the late actor River Phoenix. His scar was actually given to him by character designer and Kingdom Hearts criminal Tetsuya Nomura, who then decided to leave the scenario writer to come up with a reason why he had it. And the other thing about Squall's design process that I found just wow. Squall has fur lining on the collar of his coat. And this was apparently specifically included by Nomura to provide a challenge to the game's FMV designers. And boy, I'm sure they were thrilled about that. Just endlessly thrilled. Meanwhile, the characters of Fujin and Raijin, who serve as Cypher's posse, they were unused character designs for FF7, which I found kind of interesting. They were apparently characters that would have served very similar roles to the Turks, and so because the Turks were already there, they got cut. One of the goals for Squall in terms of writing was to make sure the player had insight into his thoughts, unlike how Cloud was for 7, where his thoughts were kind of a mystery on purpose. I guess they did that, though I didn't realize Cardboard had thoughts, but I guess it does. Well, what would I know? Triple Triad, specifically, is in the game as a way to try and help players stay interested in the game during long stretches without any story or cutscenes, and it was inspired heavily by, no surprise, the trading card game hobby that was extremely popular in Japan, especially at the time, probably still. Though there was a worry that just having the card collection in game would be too disconnected from the main game for players to actually want to interact with it, and so they also decided to implement an ability to turn cards into items that can be used outside of Triple Triad. We talked back in the day about how Final Fantasy VII's localization process was kind of a mess, but after that game was a smash success in the West, Square kind of decided to change up how their games got localized, implementing what they called a strong communication network between their American and Japanese branches. Final Fantasy VIII was the first game to benefit from this new focus on communication. Nevertheless, though, there were times when the localizers had trouble directly contacting the developers, and apparently, allegedly, an IT worker on the game's localization team had to use a Game Shark to access and edit the game's text files, which, wow. Final Fantasy VIII reviewed pretty well upon release, a 90 on Metacritic. Large amount of the praise was given to the game's impressive cinematic cutscenes, which were genuinely, no, sarcasm, incredible for the time. Not super impressive now, but for 1999, damn, they looked good. They looked very, very good. It is often cited as one of the best games on the PlayStation, and it obviously has a very hefty fan base to this day. A lot of people really, really like Final Fantasy VIII. Though Remastered did not fare quite as well in terms of reviews, its Metacritic score on PC dropped all the way down to 73, and its highest Metacritic score is 82 on Xbox One, which those aren't the worst scores, obviously, but they're definitely not 90 anymore. In terms of where Final Fantasy VIII characters went from here, 5 of them appear in Kingdom Hearts. In Kingdom Hearts 1, you can meet Squall, who is now going by Leon, and now has a personality. The Wikipedia says that Squall's personality remains the same between Final Fantasy VIII and Kingdom Hearts. Wikipedia is a liar. Leon is literally the only Final Fantasy character in Kingdom Hearts that is made a better character in those games. And you also have Selphie in Kingdom Hearts 1, though a kid version of her who appears as one of the residents of Destiny Islands alongside Final Fantasy X's Tidus and Waka, and you can obviously see a teenage version of her in Kingdom Hearts 2. But Kingdom Hearts 2 also introduces Cypher as a gang leader on the streets of Twilight Town, once again alongside Fujin and Raijin, though in Kingdom Hearts they are referred to as Fu and Rai. And all 3 of them, for some reason, share a friendship with Vivi from Final Fantasy IX. Who knows why? Squall, meanwhile, is a regular in the various Final Fantasy crossovers. His gunblade is one of the most iconic weapons in video games. I'd say it's just as, if not more, iconic than Cloud's Buster Sword, to be perfectly honest. The revolver sword is strong. Rinoa also sometimes joins him in games like Dissidia. And Triple Triad is one of the main attractions at the Gold Saucer in Final Fantasy XIV, but you can also play it on mobile devices through the Final Fantasy Portal app. Now, obviously, being a Final Fantasy game prior to Final Fantasy X, the only person that worked on the soundtrack in general for this game was Nobuo Uematsu, whom we have talked about extensively on this show. But there is a very significant track with a vocalist, and that vocalist is Faye Wong. She is a Chinese singer, songwriter, actress, producer. She has a very, very storied history, and trying to go over all of it would keep us here for like an hour. I recommend at least looking into her Wikipedia page, though, because it's very interesting and very detailed, like to a point where, while looking it up for research, I started to feel like I might have bitten off more than I can chew, but let's see if I can figure this out. Faye Wong was born August 8th, 1969 in Beijing. Her birth name is Shalin. She began singing as a student, which was an activity that apparently the school sometimes had to hide from her mother because her mother saw singing and music as a dead-end career and not worth pursuing. She released 6 cover albums from 1985 to 1987, which that's a lot. And while she was still in high school, too. So, like, that's a lot, and also going to school at the same time. These albums were mainly made up of covers of music by Taiwanese singer Teresa Teng, who was her personal idol. In 1987, she migrated to Hong Kong to attend Xiamen University, but found her time there to be kind of lonely, as she did not speak any Cantonese at all. But it's there that she began taking singing lessons from Tai Seicheng, a well-known vocal instructor. And this led to her signing with Sinopoly Records at age 19, where she took on the stage name Shirley Wong. She released her debut album, also called Shirley Long, in 1989, which sold over 30,000 copies. 2 more albums, Everything and You're the Only One, would be released in 1990, but these would not sell as well as her debut album did. So in 1991, she was kind of frustrated with where her career was going, so she traveled to New York City in order to study abroad. But as it was a very hurried decision, a last-minute one, she missed her window to actually register for classes, and so she kind of just ended up hanging out in New York. And according to her, she found the overall confidence of the people in that city very inspiring, and she kind of believed that she had been like that as well before moving to Hong Kong, but had kind of lost that in her time living in Hong Kong. When she returned to Hong Kong, she got a new agent named Katie Chan, and that relationship would continue for the next 20 years. Chan is apparently quoted as saying, quote, "Faye does whatever she wants. It's really quite a miracle that she became a success." Apparently, Faye Wong is well known for not really going with the flow and not adhering to what trends say and stuff like that. She just sort of does whatever she wants, like the quote says. Now, from 1992 to 2003, she released 16 studio albums, both in Cantonese and in Mandarin. She was the first Chinese singer to perform at Japan's Nippon Budokan, which, if you do not know what the Budokan is, it is the musical venue in Japan. It is one of the most prestigious musical venues in the world, even. If you watch anime where it's about like a band or something, chances are they're going to mention how, oh man, one day we'll play at the Budokan. It's a big deal to play there. And then between the years of 2005 and 2009, she actually went on an indefinite hiatus, but she came back for a new tour in 2010. Her most recent album, at least according to Wikipedia, was Be Perfunctory in 2015. And in terms of her discography, FF8's the only video game she's ever contributed to, and that's not super surprising. She does not seem like a person that is super tuned in to the video game industry. Now, in terms of historical development research for FF8, again, soundtrack was done by Nobuo Uematsu. And for this game's soundtrack, he apparently wanted to focus on the more emotional content of the scenes that the music would play in, and he prioritized this over improving his own skill. His reasoning being, and I love this quote, "I think it will be a shame if we won't be able to cry as we play our own game." Respect. And unlike its previous two predecessors, Final Fantasy VIII does not feature individual themes for characters, as Uematsu had kind of come to the conclusion that this was actually pretty ineffective in 6 and 7. So instead, he changed his philosophy to believing that a character should only get a theme if they were a highlight of the game's plot. And in his opinion, the only characters heavily highlighted in 8 were Squall and Rinoa, specifically grouped together as a couple. And we'll get to where that led here in a second. We're going to start the Critical 5. And, there's no better place to start an RPG than the main battle theme. So critical track number 1 is Don't Be Afraid. Like I said, this is the main battle theme. I think it's got a really good momentum to it. It is, it's no Let the Battles Begin, and it's no Battle 1 from FF9, but I think it's up there with, like, FF10's battle theme. I really do like this one. I think it's very, very good. Though my brain is broken. See, the first time I ever heard this song, well, the first time I heard it was in Theatrhythm, but the one that I remember the most is there is a different, more meme version that apparently originated on Tumblr that is making fun of a picture of a sign in what seems to be a Walmart. And it sounds like this.
Water, water, and water, and water, 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 and water, and water.
And every time I hear the original, this is all I hear. Like, legitimately, when I was doing my playthrough, I started mumbling it every time I got into a battle. It would start in water and water and water, water, water and water. I don't know what else to, like, that's all I can think about when I hear this song now. It's a problem. Critical track number 2, though, and this might be seen as kind of an interesting pick for some people, though Square themselves also treat it as a pretty important track. And it's one of my favorite tracks in the game. This is Waltz for the Moon. This is the music that plays at the graduation party, where Squall and Rinoa meet for the first time, and is also featured in the very, very famous sequence of Squall and Rinoa dancing in an FMV cutscene. That's, again, pretty impressive for a game in 1999. And I've always had a soft spot for this song. I first heard it in Theatrhythm. It was one of my favorite songs to play in Theatrhythm. It still kind of is, even in Final Barline. But I just love how big and celebratory the whole thing sounds. The MIDIs can be a little bit rough. I'm PlayStation 1, what can you do? But I do think that they really do nail the feeling of a big orchestra playing to a fancy party. And this song's just really fun to listen to. I really, really like this song. I did find out that apparently the sequence of the dance was used as a tech demo for the PS2 as a way of showing how the system was capable of rendering FMV in real time. So that's neat. I didn't know that. But enough with the feel-good waltzing. We don't need any of that. We gotta get into more battle themes. And honestly, Critical Track number 3 is probably the more famous battle theme from this game. And that is The Man with the Machine Gun. So this is the battle theme for the sequences in which you are playing as Laguna. That's why it's called The Man with the Machine Gun, because you are literally playing as a dude with a machine gun. Simple as that. And like I said, this is the more famous of the regular battle themes, and for a damn good reason. It's catchy as hell, it has a really cool sense of forward momentum, and it just has a completely different feel from Don't Be Afraid. Don't Be Afraid sounds more like dangerous and epic, while Man with the Machine Gun has a very high amount of confidence to it, and it's more of a groove. And I think that's meant to reflect that Laguna and his crew have a much higher level of experience on the battlefield compared to Squall's crew, so it's reflected in the music. But this song's catchy as hell. It's too catchy, actually. This is one of the best tracks in the game, bar none. It is so good. One of the best battle themes in Final Fantasy, and that's some high praise, in my opinion. Now let's get into the reason why we talked about Faye Wong earlier. Critical track number 4, again, one of the more famous songs from this game. This is Eyes on Me.
Darling, so there you are, with that look on your face, as if you never hurt, as if you never down. Shall I be the one for you, who pinches you softly but sure?
This song was written and performed by Faye Wong. It is not on the game's official soundtrack, as it was released separately by her, and this marks the first ever instance, apparently, of a Chinese singer performing in a Japanese video game. At least according to Wikipedia. Take that with a grain of salt, I feel like. And it plays during a I guess you could call it romantic if you squinted really hard between Squall and Renoa. It's basically supposed to be the moment that they both finally, like, embrace how they're in love with each other because Squall decides he's going to be in love with her for some reason. I don't know, man. I'm trying not to be mean here, but it's a bad romance story. Anyways, this is the first time that Final Fantasy as a series had ever used a vocal theme for any of its games. And now that's kind of somewhat of a tradition. It would continue from here in 9 with Melodies of Life and Sticky Dane in Final Fantasy X, so on and so forth. Apparently, though, they had considered a vocal theme in FF7, but when they started looking into it, they kind of decided that it wasn't really thematically appropriate for 7's story and its tone, so they held off on it. When thinking of it for 8, though, Uematsu had decided that a ballad would work very well with 8's themes, and so after looking at a ton of artists to find a good fit, they came across Faye Wong. And Uematsu is quoted as saying, "Her voice and mood seem to match my image of the song exactly." So the song was recorded in Hong Kong alongside an orchestra and released as a single in Japan. At release, this single broke the record for the highest selling video game song ever released in the country, selling over 400,000 copies. It was a big deal. And it's very nice. Faye Wong's voice is very, very, very good. I may not like this game or this sequence, but I will admit that this song is gorgeous and great. And I really, really like Eyes on Me. But once again, enough of feelings. We don't need feelings. We need battle. We need blood. And that's what you're going to get in critical track number 5. This is The Extreme. The final boss of Final Fantasy VIII has a ton of phases to it. Like a ton. And this is the music that plays during the final phase of the battle. And I think it's probably my favorite song in the whole game. Something about this song is really, really good, especially when it gets going. I really like that it makes reference to the classic Final Fantasy bass line, the dun 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 dun. Is it Dancing Mad or One Winged Angel? No, not really. But I do think it is still one of the better final boss themes in the entire franchise. I don't know. This song's really cool. FF14 apparently during Endwalker had an event that was heavily based around Final Fantasy VIII stuff. And so there's an orchestrated version of this song on the FF14 soundtrack that is, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. I love it. It's so, so good. I don't know. I really, really like this song. I like the slow intro to it, but once it really gets in and becomes that battle theme, I don't know. It's really, really hype. I enjoy it, and I was happy to hear it in context at the very least, because I'd known it from Theatrhythm, and I wanted to see how it turned out. So, hey, we got that. So, for tracks on the cutting room floor, actually Peter put down a couple, and also gave me a quote to explain why he picked these two. He says, quote, "Last week I talked about a video game music radio station on Pandora that helped me discover Max Payne 3's soundtrack. Music from Final Fantasy VIII also appeared on this station, particularly these two tracks, as well as The Man with the Machine Gun for what it's worth. So while I have no experience with playing Final Fantasy VIII, I at least have familiarity with these songs." And the first of those songs is Liberi Fatali. This song is referenced as being like one of the more famous songs from the game, but I had never heard it until I like played the game, so I don't know how much I believe that, but who knows. This plays during the intro cinematic, where you see Squall and Cypher sparring outside the garden, and they both give each other the scars on their faces, and it's very obviously like a bragging moment. It's a show-off moment for Square to be like, look what we can do, baby. Look at our graphics. Look at our animation. Oh, man, this is good, isn't it? And again, legitimately impressive for the time. And I did also learn that apparently this song was used as music for a performance during the women's synchronized swimming event at the 2004 Summer Olympics in Athens. Which, sure, why not? The other track on the cutting room floor for Peter is Balam Garden. This, of course, as you can probably guess, plays in Balam Garden, which is Squall's home, Squall and Zell's home specifically, and kind of Selphie's home, but not really. And it just has this very peaceful feeling to it. It has a feeling of being home. The garden never really stuck out to me. A lot of the field music in FF8, I think, is kind of just middling. But this is probably definitely one of the better ones of them. Blue Fields, the overworld music is not bad either, I guess, but this one at least has a very nice homey feeling to it. For my two tracks on the cutting room floor, they're both battle tracks. The first one being Force Your Way. This is the main boss theme that you hear throughout the game. And I just kind of like this song's sense of energy and sense of tenseness. And the note progressions throughout are just a lot of fun to like whistle along to. I don't know. I don't think it's as good as either of the regular battle themes, but I do think it is worth giving a shout out to, because I do think it is a very, very fun track that I do very much enjoy listening to. And the other track on the cutting room floor is yet another of the music you hear during the final boss's many phases. This is Maybe I'm a Lion. This song plays during the second to last phase of the final boss, where you fight the sorceress's GF. It's still stupid every time I say it. You know me. I'm a sucker for heavy drums. This song sounds cool. It's very simple, and again, I don't think it's as good as the Extreme at all, but I don't know, this song has always stuck out to me as just being really, really cool and hyped to listen to, so I wanted to give it a shout out as well. So what will I never forget about Final Fantasy VIII? I don't like it. I don't like this game. It's just, Squall sucks. Drawing and junctioning sucks. But the music's good, and I like Selphie. Selphie's good. I like Selphie a lot. She's fun. Kistis, take it or leave it. Renoa, bad taste in men, but she's fine. Zell, I would like to stuff in a locker. And I genuinely don't remember anything about Irvine. Irvine? I don't even care to learn how to pronounce his name. But Squall is like the weak link of the game, and he's the one you have to spend all your time with. Laguna is fun. If this game was completely about Laguna, I'd probably feel a little bit differently about it. I'd still hate drawing and junctioning, but Laguna is a fun character. Laguna? I've been calling him Laguna for like 2 years, and I don't think I'm gonna stop. Anyways, the music's really good. That's the main thing I won't forget about this. Though I heard like pretty much all of this music, except for Eyes on Me, which was not in Theatrhythm Curtain Call. It is in Final Barline, but only if you got the deluxe edition, because it's one of the bonus tracks that came at launch for the people that bought that, because it has separate licensing fees, I assume. In fact, people, when like FF7 and 9 and a bunch of other Final Fantasy games were getting like remasters and re-releases on modern consoles and 8 wasn't, the general theory was that Square had lost the rights to Eyes on Me, which I don't think has any merit to it, and I don't think there was anything that was actually pointing that way, but that was like the thing that people were speculating. And that'll do it for this week's original Soundchat. Hope you enjoyed me talking about the Final Fantasy game I've played and liked the least so far. Granted, I have not played a lot of them. I think at this point it is only, it's 7, then 10, then 9, and then 8. And 13 is going to be sometime this year, hopefully. We'll see. It's installed on the Steam Deck. I'll get to it eventually, I'm sure. So, you can follow the two of us on Twitter. I am at StringPixel, and you can find Peter over at Pete Speak Easy. You can find the video version of this podcast over on the YouTube channel Rhymes with Asia, but if you're looking for the audio feed specifically, you can find that at anondino.squarespace.com. It's on all of your podcatchers too. It's on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify even, where not only do we have our full feed of episodes, but we also have a separate playlist full of music that we have talked about on this show. If it's on Spotify and we talked about it on the show, it goes on this playlist. Again, I'm a little bit behind in adding music to this playlist. I apologize. I'm slowly working my way forward, and hopefully within the next week or so, I'll be caught up, and there will be even more of an insane amount of music on that playlist. And that's good because Final Fantasy VIII will be joining that music. It is on Spotify. All of the mainline Final Fantasies are on Spotify, and a lot of the spin-offs too, so good on Square still. And once you're done listening to that, you can find the show on social media at Soundchat OST, where you can tell us how we're doing, tell us what you think of the songs that we talked about on any given episode, or you can suggest a game for us to talk about. That would be cool too. I've done quite a few listener suggestions this year, Peter as well. So we're slowly working our way through it. And if you want to hear us talk about a game and you don't think we're going to get it, you should probably tell us. So next week, I'm going to be talking about Dai Nakamura, while Peter will be talking about Takahito Eguchi, hopefully. Hopefully it is a 2-person episode. So far, it does not seem like anything's going to stop that, but whoo, boy. Anyways, to play us out, we usually do a fan cover or fan remix, whether we find it on YouTube, OST Remix, anything like that. Usually YouTube in my case. And obviously, the song I was going to find the most covers of is Eyes on Me. Granted, you can find plenty of covers of other music from this game, but Eyes on Me is the big one. And I found a piano rendition of Eyes on Me. No vocals, unfortunately, but still, you know me in piano versions. By the YouTube channel Ruse Piano Ru. That's R-U-S Piano R-U. It's a very, very good rendition of Eyes on Me. I love piano songs. You all know this. So I hope you enjoy that, and we will see you next week. Thank you for listening on Original Soundchat. Take care.